It's a busy day ahead for the South African National Editors Forum. It'll commemorate the life of journalist and senior SABC radio producer Suna. But it also heads to court today for an urgent application against Black First Land First. We're joined via Skype by Sanef chairperson Mahlatse Gallens this morning. Mahlatse, a very good morning to you and thank you for your time. Undoubtedly a very busy day, a very busy week it has been for you as well. Just very quickly, what is your call for journalists, for those who support journalists during this case when you go to the South Gauteng High Court today to interdict BLF?
You know, that's a very important thing that we have been trying to say this week, to say that this is not just about the journalists that were intimidated, threatened, and the continued harassment of these journalists in the media and also via social media. But I think as South Africans, we need to come together because this is an attack on our constitution. Media freedom is guaranteed in our constitution. We do what we do because it is in the public interest. And it is important that South Africans also see these threats, these harassments, and all of that, to see it as part of an attack on our democracy. We always argue that, you know, media freedom is not for journalists, but it is for South Africa. We see media freedom as an integral part of strengthening South Africa's democracy. Journalists go out to do their work because they're interested in actually putting the public first.
Mahlatse, do we believe, though, that BLF does pose a real physical threat to these journalists and other journalists as well who might be added to that list? Do we really need to be giving them the importance that they seem to want and giving them the platform that they want?
You see, for us, this is about the rule of law, and we have to continuously put that above all. We saw them going to Peter Bruce's home last week. We saw them threatening the journalists that were also on the ground on that particular day. And even when Sanef sent them a warning letter to say to them they must stop, what we saw was an escalation of those threats. I mean, we don't know who the people are. We don't know what their plans are. But what it is important is that we need to remind people that we are a country that is governed by the rule of law. I mean, you heard after even the Minister of Police, Fikile Mbalula, was saying that, you know, this is a criminal act and police will act. They actually basically dismissed that for nothing. And for us, what is important is to say that this is about the rule of law. This is about protecting our democracy. And we don't want to find ourselves in situations where, you know, we think we should have acted. You know, these attacks on journalists, and as the minister had said, earlier in the week, is not just the journalist. You know, we saw the other week the home of a politician, also people marching to that home, and you don't know what can happen in those situations. We don't know what are the instructions that the people that are protesting are actually given.
And just looking at, you know, where this is coming from and who we know who sort of supports, who backs, who BLF is actually seen to be a mouthpiece for. Have you tried to actually have any sort of dialogue with them, to sort of have a chat with them, get together in the same room with BLF and just see, you know, exactly where their minds are at and maybe get through to them, if I had to put it that way?
It's very difficult to try and have a meeting with people that are threatening you. The language that has been used has been that of threats, and they are basically threatening us with violence. And we have argued that you can't contest ideas with violence. I think it is important that if the BLF concedes that what they have done, it is wrong, and they're basically saying that let's come together and talk about issues, then it's a different matter altogether. But literally, you can't go and meet with people that have defined some of our editors as askaris when they have said that they will go and find our editors at their homes, at their place of worship. And we don't know how that conversation would go. I think it is important as a first step that the BLF then says that we denounce violence and we will stop the threatening of journalists. Let's contest ideas, let's meet and let's talk. Then it's a different matter altogether.
Well, serious threats indeed. And I mean, speaking of one of the people, and I suppose, Mahlatse, you might agree with me when people think that journalists should be able to take whatever comes at them, that we have the thickest of skins and, you know, we took on this job and we should be able to take all kinds of abuse. And one of the people who did endure death threats and intimidation was Suna, and she'll be remembered at a memorial as well today. And for those who don't quite understand the stresses of this job, she was a perfect example of what can happen.
Look, I think that we must remember that journalists do expect that they will be criticized. I don't think that we can sit here and say that people should not critique our work, but that they must critique our work in the opinion pages that are there. They must come on eNCA and do the interviews and critique our work, but they should not threaten journalists and their lives. That's a different issue altogether. And today we will be remembering Suna, and we will be remembering that, you know, journalism in this country is not always easy. We know the battle that was waged by the SABC 8 at the public broadcaster. Suna was a colleague of mine when I was also there. And, you know, we forget also that this is the kind of job where you can't leave yourself out of it. A lot of the time, every single day when we come to work, we come with all of ourselves into these jobs. And when we are unable to do that work, then it causes stress, it causes harm. And then when there are these threats combined with it, it becomes really difficult. I think that when we remember Suna today is that we must remember what those who wrote our constitution were thinking about. And they said that journalists must be able to do their work freely without fear or intimidation. And as we remember her and many others, it's about saying that we want to live in a country that was envisioned by those that constructed our constitution.
And on a more personal note, Mahlatsi, what do you remember? What will be your fondest memory? What is your fondest memory of Suna Venter?
You know, I actually had to go back to our last WhatsApp conversation, which was just a few weeks ago. And we were basically talking about what had happened at the SABC and how, you know, but how far things have also come. I mean, there was a time when things were really difficult and we felt that there was no support. We had you could go to Parliament and there were few people that were willing to listen. You could go to anybody within any form of power and, you know, you felt that there was just no support for this, that we were fighting against, and how things have turned. I mean, I think that what I thought is that as much as Suna died very sad and very unhappy, at least there are signs that there is a change at the public broadcaster. We have a parliament that is now asking the right questions about what is happening at the SABC. We have an interim board that is trying to get rid of the rot that had set in at the SABC. And also, you know, journalism has to thrive. And I'm hoping that, you know, as part of remembering Suna, those that are in power, they will continue to ensure that what she lived for and what she dedicated her life for continues, which is that the public broadcaster must be a place where people can have conversation, where South Africans can have their country reflected back to them.
Thanks very much for your time. Sanef Chairperson Mahlatsi Gallens there on taking on Black First, Land First in court today and remembering Suna Venter.